South Africa's national power utility has gone with hands out to the National Treasury once again. The request came just before Eskom increased scheduled power cuts to stage 6, repeating the worst outage on record and putting further strain on households and businesses. Eskom's spokesperson sent a clear message on Wednesday that the current intense load shedding, which means 6 to 8 hours without electricity every day, is unlikely to improve in the next 6 to 12 months. Eskom is asking for 19.5 billion rand from the National Treasury to purchase diesel to fuel auxiliary power plants. The country's finance minister has warned that such a request is unlikely to be granted. Joining me now from Pretoria, South Africa, is economist Dr. Pali Lehohla. He is also the director of the Economic Modeling Academy in South Africa and a research associate at Oxford University. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lehohla. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning, or is it good afternoon? Good afternoon, yes. Thanks for inviting me. A correction, I'm not an economist, I'm a statistician.
Okay, statistician.
But I can read economics.
And I'm very sure you can read what's happening with the economy of South Africa right now.
Yes.
So let's start from there. In terms of the country's GDP, we've seen it slow, that is slowing the rate of growth as it is right now. Many people have tied that to what's happening with Eskom in terms of the economic impact of the state power utility. So let's start from there. With the blackouts, paint us a picture of where the economy stands because of Eskom's inefficiencies.
Well, having been a statistician general, I was responsible for producing the numbers that look at the conditions in South Africa, both social, economic, and governance. And when it comes to economic governance, we have been teetering on the margins as growth declined significantly, not only because of COVID lately, but when COVID came, South Africa was already notching very, very low growth because of mismanagement of economy, particularly. The design of policies have actually not generated any hope for any better economic growth. So when we see the growth that we are having now, compounded by Eskom and the polar positions that are taken by the Minister of Finance and that of the people from Eskom asking for 19.something billion, and the minister saying it's not going to happen, just marks, epitomizes the bad policy design that we have inflicted this country for many years. So when we are in a state where we actually should not only look at Eskom, but look at our policy design that is actually very, very weak, so and at the very best, sick.
At this point. So the 19.5 that Eskom is asking for, it says that it's to alleviate the situation of the breakdown in its coal plants and, of course, the blackouts. Eskom has spent about 11 billion rand on fuel in the 10 months through October and warned last month that the electricity outages may actually intensify if it runs out of fuel, or rather funds to buy the fuel that it needs to power its stations. In terms of the actual request, is it a request that South Africa can afford, trying to weigh the impact of a worser electricity situation than what the country is currently facing right now?
It is a request that they cannot afford not to afford. Because when the grid collapses, then everything collapses. And even those who say we can't afford will have to realize that the country will collapse. So it is this, when I said the policy design is very weak, it is reflective of that small boyish argument when the country is in trouble. It compounds what I've actually argued against, that there we are busy destroying the power plants, coal-fired power plants, such as Komati, which had 1,000 megawatts, and it was closed in favor of the just energy transition to please the multinationals. And there we are now. We don't have that 1,000. In fact, they said it was 121 megawatts. It was never 121 megawatts. It was 1,000 megawatts produced by Komati, which was turned into a training center. Instead of ensuring they maintain that, they shut it down. Now you don't even have that 121 megawatts that was on the last power plant that one was mothballed. So we are on this program of shutting down coal-fired power plants when those who are encouraging us to do so are opening new mines of coal in order to fire their own energy requirements.
And their
so
own
how
economies.
stupid can we be as a country? So it's really, really, when I say policy design, gone horribly wrong under people who do not understand economics or anything about governance and leading the charge.
So in terms of policy, let's look at something that was quickly announced in October. And we know for more than a decade now, South Africa has been pouring billions of rand into Eskom. A number of bailouts have gone into the company, mainly with nothing to show. But in October, the Treasury announced that it would take over more than half of Eskom's multi-billion-dollar debt. And in the mini budget statement, the finance minister said that governments would give Eskom 225 billion rand towards debt for the period of 2019 to 2026. In terms of it being a policy or a direction or even a bailout, does this go far enough? What else really does need to be done for Eskom? You've talked about not necessarily heeding the advice of the West in terms of shutting down the coal-fired power plants that fueled the South African economy. So what needs to be done for Eskom?
You know, Eskom, when it generates, it opens up energy. That should not be driven by markets. You don't go to the markets to power your energy requirements for industrialization. You borrow in your own currency from your own pension funds. Then you don't have this liability to the markets. When Eskom was actually established in 1923, by the way, this Eskom power will be 100 years next year. Bale was the chief scientist of Transmart. He borrowed from government 16 million rands to start Eskom. That's what we have to go and find out, what actually led Bale to borrowing from government. That's the best strategy to handle, so that we are not beholden by interest rates and all those other things. Second, you need to have Eskom led by engineers. So there is a double dilemma here of a person at the helm of this being an accountant and a lawyer who is chasing to collect money. Correct, but you don't put that person at the top. You don't put the money man and the policeman at the top. You put an engineer who understands the economics of generation of power. So those are the things that have to be done, but they have not been done. The government has been very stubborn on this, and now we are in this space. They said 4 months ago, the Minister of Public Enterprise, Pravin Gordhan, he said, oh no, it's just level 2 load shedding. It's very far from level 8 load shedding. I argued that load shedding 1 or 2, it's, in terms of its impact, it's exponential in its impact. And now we are on load shedding 6, and its impact, it's also there exponential because it has reverberations across the system. That you have two load shedding 2, it means those who are suffering load shedding at that point that is rotating cannot connect with anybody else. And that is why this thing is exponential.
Okay.
So we are in this space here with people who can't actually design any policy that is meaningful, that cannot even operationalize those weak policies, and we have landed in this type of problem today.
Doctor, all right, Dr. Lehohla, it's a difficult time for me right now because there are time constraints on my side. But as we focus on Eskom, we know that we want to keep our eye on the most industrialized economy in the continent and, of course, see how things progress. But unfortunately, we have to end the conversation here today. I do look forward to having you back because the issues of Eskom are a decade old and they won't take a year, 2 or 3 to fix. So we look forward to talking more in terms of the solutions for Eskom in South Africa. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And as my guest has said, there's stages 1 to 8, but currently right now, stage 6 is the worst stage of load shedding on record in South Africa, but it doesn't mean that it can't get much worse. And the potential for it to get worse is there. He also said that this is a request that South Africa cannot afford not to afford. We'll see how things play out over the next several days. This request comes from Eskom, 19.5 billion rand for fuel in order to keep the power utility operating and keep lights on in households and businesses across South Africa. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Head to our website, www.newscentral.africa, and of course, download our mobile app on Play Store and App Store. Until next time, I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun, 12 p.m. West African time. News Central Now comes your way.